Hey everyone, Jeff here. Today I've got a vinyl update to do. Not a particularly huge one, but a fair amount of jazz, classical, and rock stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and I'm just going to get straight into it. The first one I want to show here is Moon and Mind by Oregon. And this is a band that I always like picking up their records if I see them. And this is an excellent album. I haven't heard anything from Oregon that isn't excellent. And their music is a little bit tough to pigeonhole. It's kind of like somewhere in between, you know, some sort of chamber jazz that you would hear on ECM and more folk-oriented music, and that's largely due to the instrumentation. There's sitar, tabla, oboe, flute, I think, clarinet. It's kind of all over the place a little bit in terms of instrumentation, but it's really, really unique. And their music is relaxing, it's complex, it's textured, really, really good stuff. So if you get a chance to hear their music, really great. And a number of the musicians here, particularly Ralph Towner, Glenn Moore, Colin Walcott, you know, they should ring a bell for a lot of jazz listeners. So anyway, really, really good stuff. Very happy to get that for $2. The next one I want to show here is Pete Chrislieb and the Warren Marsh Quintet with the album Apogee. And this album came out like 78 or 79, but it sounds like it could have come out, honestly, 20 years earlier than that. Really hard bop, hard-hitting stuff. And the instrumentation here is actually pretty cool too, because you have two tenor saxophones. So there's a lot of, you know, the two of them just duking it out. Lots of interesting counterpoint and polyphonic stuff going on here too. So really, really good album. I wouldn't say it's anything, you know, you have to go rush out and get, but if you see this cheap like I did, definitely pick it up. Now this next one here was a bit of a surprise for me. And that's Stan Kenton in Hi-Fi. And Stan Kenton is a name that I'd heard before, but I'm not a particularly huge big band fan. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like listening to a really good big band, but it's not the sort of jazz that I usually seek out. But I saw this record for 50 cents, and I figured, well, I've never listened to Stan Kenton before, so might as well give it a shot. And this is really unique stuff. You can tell that, you know, his inspiration in terms of the way he wrote stuff was not just based in blues and jazz, and he definitely listened to a lot of classical stuff. And it's interesting music, and the horn section here is just unbelievable. They're all screamers, and Maynard Ferguson actually was in Kenton's band before he went and formed his own. So really, really cool album, and I'll have to keep an eye out for more Stan Kenton. Next one here is Steve Kuhn and Ecstasy with Motility, and this is on ECM, and this is interesting. This is like you know, definitely sounds like something on ECM, but maybe a little bit more hard hitting than what you'd expect. I just actually finished up my first listen to this, and I really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, cool stuff on ECM. Now, the next batch of stuff, of records I want to show here are all rock ones. So, yeah, first one here is The Jewel by Pendragon. And Pendragon was, well, they still are, a neo-progressive rock group from the UK. And they were big, I guess around this time. This is their debut album. Around this time, they played at the Marquee and with a lot of the same shows like IQ, 12th Night, Marillion. You know, they were one of the big names back then in the neo-prog scene. And I'll say, you know, this debut album of theirs is certainly not a Script for a Jester's Tear or Tales from the Lush Attic or anything like that. But it's a strong album. I think Pendragon really hit their stride with some of their 90s albums like The World and The Masquerade Overture. But this is still really, really good stuff. And if you get a chance to pick this up, definitely a good album. The next one here is Greenslade with Spyglass Guest. And this is the album that they put out in 1974. So I guess, you know, they had put out a number of things before this, but this is still really good. It's not usually talked about as much as some of the earlier Greenslade albums, but really strong progressive rock, great keyboard work, especially on this, so really cool. The next one here is String Driven Thing, and this was a band that I had actually never heard of, but this is on the Charisma label, and I'll show that real quick just because it's so cool. Yeah, so on the old school Mad Hatter label that, you know, some of my favorite music ever was released on that label, so I figured give it a shot. And this, it's not really my thing. They usually end up being labeled as progressive folk. I don't hear a whole lot of progressive stuff here. It's, you know, pretty par for the course folk rock from the 70s, but still decent. It's got some interesting things going on. So again, nothing I'd rush out and get, but definitely a cool little curiosity. Next one here, this one really upset me. Tygers of Pan Tang with Wildcat. This is their first album, came out in 1980, I think. So, you know, right at the forefront of the new wave of British heavy metal with Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and all that stuff. But unfortunately, this US pressing had a lot of issues, and I actually posted this on Facebook just asking, and, you know, people said, yeah, you know, it affected the whole pressing. But in any case, side one here for me just plays really fast and high pitched, and it's just unlistenable because of that. So I paid $12 for this, you know, so pretty disappointing that it didn't work out. But yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with this now, but anyway, I'll have to find another pressing because it's a good album and I'd like to get it at some point. Next one here is Vinyl Confessions by Kansas. And this is the first album with John Elefante on vocals, and it's actually a pretty good album. The only other 80s Kansas album I think I've listened to is the one before this. I think it's called like Audio Visions or something like that, and I remember thinking that one was okay. This one actually made a pretty positive first impression. I mean, not in the same way that their 70s stuff does, you know, with, you know, being progressive and bombastic and everything. This is much more subtle, very AOR based, you know, but there's still some complexities here, and not a bad album. I definitely enjoyed listening to it, and I think it gets a little bit unfairly panned. So cool to get that. Now the next bunch I've got here are all classical or classical related albums. First one is Michael Rubini's Secret Dreams, Improvisations. And this is on the Gold Castle label, which is something I don't own anything else on. But I picked this up for only $1. I was just curious. I like new age albums sometimes if I'm trying to fall asleep or whatever. I don't mean that in a bad way, but, you know, good for unwinding. And this is okay. It really didn't grab me too much. It just felt pretty average, uneventful, you know, but still decent enough. So if you see it cheap and you're into that type of thing, not horrible. Next one here, Brahms Symphony No. 1 by the Philadelphia Orchestra and Eugene Ormandy. And Brahms is a composer that I'm only passively familiar with. I listened to, you know, just a couple things here and there, and, you know, he's, I guess, you know, just based on the time frame in which he was alive, he would be considered a romantic composer. But this definitely, to me, doesn't sound romantic in the same way that you would think of other romantic composers. It sounds a lot more of the school of Beethoven or Mozart, I guess. You know, it a little bit more standard sounding classical music, I guess, than what you would typically associate with a romantic composer. But anyway, really, really good stuff. I need to listen to this more before I can fully digest it, but very cool to get this. And I actually saw the Philadelphia Orchestra, not with Eugene Ormandy, obviously, but I saw them recently, and it was great. They did Beethoven's Fifth Piano Concerto, they did a Mayakovsky piece, and they did a Janáček piece, Taras Bulba. So it was a really, really cool performance. And so yeah, anyway, Brahms Symphony No. 1. This one here was pretty interesting. It's called Koto Handel, and it's the water music and Royal Fireworks suites. So, you know, kind of condensed versions of both. And it's performed by the New Koto Ensemble of Tokyo. So what this basically is Baroque era classical music being played by a Koto ensemble. So Japanese traditional instrumentation on something that you wouldn't typically associate with that. So really cool hearing this reimagined in that context. And I think I only paid $1 for this too, so really nice to get that. And the next one here is yet another copy of the Rite of Spring by Igor Stravinsky, because you can never have too many recordings of this. This is by the Strasbourg Philharmonic, conducted by Elaine Lombard. Excuse me. But yeah, I mean, the Rite of Spring is one of my favorite, actually probably is my favorite classical piece. I just love how unique it is, how innovative it was for the time. I mean, it's no wonder that it was considered just completely shocking when people first heard it. And yeah, I really love this piece, and this is a fantastic recording on the Musical Heritage Society label. So if you get, you know, I mean, if you haven't heard this piece, absolutely check it out. But this is definitely a good recording, and one of the better ones that I've heard. So really nice to get that. And I think I only paid 20 cents for it too, so that sweetens the deal a little bit. So that's all I've got to show for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.